Do you need this, or do you need this?
The mic.
The mic, yeah, do we need this? Maybe you should stand here next to me, or you're going to stand there? Or? Oh, you're standing there, okay. It is great to be here in Brussels, and especially to see the sun shining, such a beautiful day. I was in Brussels once on holiday, in 1994, and I was here twice on business, and every time it rained. And my picture of Brussels was, oh, it's a very rainy city. But it's great to see that it's also a sunshine city. So, it's good to meet our neighbors. Brussels is the closest church to us, to Amsterdam. And I'm really encouraged to see you guys. And for us to grow in our friendship and in our love for each other. En voor de Vlaams sprekende breng ik ook groet uit Amsterdam. Maar de les vandaag zal alleen in Engels en in Frans zijn. Maakt niet uit. Het is een special message just for the insiders. Well, the kingdom of God is a really amazing and a special place. We were driving around and then roads were closed and planning to be early and then arriving just like 5 minutes after we planned to be here at 10 o'clock.
On roulait, et puis les routes sont barrées, on n'avait plus d'arriver à l'avance, mais ça allait juste à 5 minutes.
And driving up on the way, just all the way, no parking, not a single space to be seen.
Et on remontait la rue, et pas de place pour se garer, pas de place, pas une seule place en vue.
And as we came around the corner here,
juste en tournant au coin là,
I was looking for a parking space, so I didn't see the car coming from the other side of the crossing. And but I saw he stopped. And then he smiled. And Caroline said, "That's a disciple smile." And we drove down the road, and there was only one open parking space. And he stopped at the parking space and he put his indicator to reverse into it. And I thought, okay, I'll wait for him to park and then I'll go down the road and look for a space. And he opened out his window and he said, "No, you park there." I said, "That must be a disciple." Or maybe everybody in Brussels is that friend. So, preaching is on special offer today. On special offer, like when you go to the shops. In these difficult financial times. So if you understand both English and French, you get 2 for the price of 1. So I want to, I don't know the Brussels church. I don't know how you guys are doing. I don't know what your needs are. But we just had our retreat in Amsterdam. And that weekend we talked about trusting in the trustworthy one. And I asked Vincent, what shall I preach about? And he said, you know what? I think trusting in each other and trusting will be a good thing. And I thought, wow, that's just the Holy Spirit. We share the same challenges sometimes. And
partage les mêmes défis la plupart du temps.
We have the same needs sometimes.
On a les mêmes besoins parfois.
And sometimes we have to learn the same things in Amsterdam and in Brussels.
Parfois on a besoin d'apprendre les mêmes choses à Amsterdam.
So I want to start off showing you a little a video clip.
So, je voulais commencer en vous montrant un petit vidéoclip.
So if you can all make sure that you can sit so you can see the screen.
Donc si vous pouvez juste vous assurer que vous pouvez voir l'écran. Voici le ski. Que voyons-nous, pardon? Le ski, hein?
Okay, so what do you think? Where did this happen? Let's see how close you were watching. Where was this clip taken?
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez? Où est-ce que ce vidéoclip a été pris?
I hear something about the mountain. Vancouver? Yes, it was Vancouver. What year? 2010, from a car, from the cable car.
Elle dit des Jeux olympiques handicapés. Handisport.
And what sport? Handicap sport. Oh, very good. It's the winter Paralympics
Les Jeux olympiques d'hiver
in Vancouver in 2010.
à Vancouver.
So what's special about these two guys skiing down the slope?
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a de spécial au sujet de ces deux hommes qui développent le jeu?
Yes. The second guy is blind.
Le deuxième skieur est aveugle. Et elle dit, il suit le premier.
And he's following the one in front.
Et il suit celui qui est devant.
We're going to see him just now. And I hope it's loud enough so you can translate what he's saying. This is an interview with, and it starts off with, this is how the blind guy experiences skiing.
C'est une interview où on explique comment le skieur aveugle vit ce moment-là, cette expérience.
Daily life, they don't get speed. And that's what I think the most exciting part of skiing is when you're blind, is that you're really moving fast. But when you're blind, you're reacting to what you're feeling under your feet. So you're literally reacting very exciting or terrifying, depending on how you look at life.
Et donc, comme vous suivez la vie, ça peut être fantastique ou terrifiant. Voilà.
It's only 8 simple words, and tells me everything I need to know on this float. With each syllable, there's no guesswork. I know exactly where to be.
C'est exactement où aller.
To become a good blind skier, it takes an investment. You have to have a good guide who you really trust, and you have to build that relationship.
Pour devenir un skieur aveugle, il faut une chose importante, c'est quelqu'un qui va baisser sa confiance.
I have to make sure that somebody up the hill is not running out of control. It's going to take, air out or my phone out. I can then stop.
you can still, as long as just get completely hammered every now and then, you know. So it's just part of the, I guess, fun.
C'est parti du plaisir.
I really did hit something.
On a fait les deux phrases.
You can turn the lights back on if you. There's a lot of light here anyway. You know, this little clip. If you're a blind guy skiing down a mountain, following someone else, it's all about trust. I mean, you cannot do that if you don't trust the guy in front of you.
Les films de skieurs aveugles qui descendent à la montre comme ça, c'est juste une question de confiance, parce que sinon c'est impossible à faire.
Now, there's some things we can learn about trust from these two guys. The guy in front said, you know, I need to make sure that he's protected.
Il y a des choses à apprendre de skieur. Celui qui mène la descente dit je dois m'assurer qu'il est protégé.
That he doesn't hit someone or something.
Qu'il ne bouscule pas, qu'il ne rentre pas en contact avec quelqu'un ou quelque chose.
The blind man said some things like, you have to react instantly.
Et ce qui est aveugle dit, vous devez réagir instantanément.
You cannot question it and you cannot think about it first.
Vous ne pouvez pas vous poser des questions ou même y penser avant.
And he said, it's either very exciting
Soit très excitant
or very terrifying.
très terrifiant.
And it all depends how you look at life.
Et tout dépend de la façon dont vous regardez la vie.
He says, it's no guesswork.
C'est pas un jeu de peine de vie.
I need to follow his instructions exactly.
Je dois suivre exactement ses instructions.
He says, it takes an investment in the person you trust.
Et ça demande un investissement dans la personne en qui vous placez la confiance.
You need a good guide that you really trust.
Vous avez besoin d'un bon guide qui vous fait vraiment confiance.
He says you need to build the relationship.
Parce que vous avez besoin de construire la relation.
And then he said, part of that learning to trust is sometimes having to fall.
Et elle dit, une partie de l'apprentissage, c'est aussi apprendre parfois à tomber.
And he says, even that's part of the fun.
Et donc, cette partie-là, c'est aussi l'amusement.
Now, trust is really all about relationships.
Donc, la confiance, c'est essentiellement une
Oh!
question de...
That's my son. that wasn't meant to happen. So, what did I say? Trust is
a matter of relationship.
relationships. And the amount we trust is also how much we will allow in our relationships.
Et à quel niveau on fait confiance, c'est aussi à quel niveau on permet...
How much we allow, what we let happen in our
On le
relationships.
permet, on le laisse arriver.
And if we put boundaries in our relationships.
Donc, si on met des limites, des frontières à nos relations.
It determines how much we protect ourselves and put up guards.
Ça détermine combien on peut se protéger soi-même et mettre des barrières.
And how much we surrender and let go of control to the other party in the relationship.
Et ça détermine combien on peut lâcher et laisser un peu de contrôle aussi à l'autre.
And the first thing I want us to learn today, I want us to be sure of, is that God is trustworthy.
Et la première chose que j'aimerais qu'on fasse sûr aujourd'hui, c'est que Dieu mérite notre confiance.
I'm not going to read all the scriptures in English as well, so I'll just give you the book, chapter and verse, and then Jean-Philippe will read it in French. In Malachi 3, verse 6. That's the first bit.
Malachie 3, verset 6. Verset 6. Car je suis l'Éternel, je ne change pas.
I, the Lord, do not change. Now, I'm not sure. There's some things that I find is the same all over the world. How are people in Sorry?
Il y a des choses qui ne changent pas partout sur la terre.
How are people on a Monday morning coming into the office in Brussels?
Comment sont les gens le lundi matin quand ils vont au bureau?
Happy. They're always happy, smiling, it's like, yes, another week. It's Monday.
Happy to think on Friday.
Yeah. You know, we as humans, we are emotional. We have moods. We have bad days. We have blue Mondays. If we don't sleep well, we're grumpy. If I don't have my meal when I want it, I'm grumpy. Malachi says, God does not change. And that builds trust. When you know what you can expect of God. He's not fickle that you wonder, what is God going to be like today? I wonder if I should dare talk to him. If I would dare, if I should dare talk to him. When I'm grumpy, my wife and my children are like in awe. I think we should avoid him a bit. God is not like that. God is trustworthy because he's always the same. He's not moody or emotional like we are. He doesn't have good days and bad days, or blue Mondays, and he never has to say, thank God it's Friday, because he's God. God is not like us at all. And I think sometimes our trust on God is based on the way we trust people. We're not going to read it now in Hebrews 13 verse 8. It says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. So Jesus is just like his Father. He can be trusted because he's reliable, he's always the same.
Amen.
Why can we trust God? Let's go to Psalm 19, verse 7.
Il se lève à une extrémité des cieux et achève sa course à l'autre extrémité. Rien ne se dérobe à sa chaleur.
Okay, if you don't understand anything, ask Jean-Philippe. Because I have no idea what he's saying. But it should say something like the statutes of the Lord, or his laws, or his commands are trustworthy. Okay, then we have this problem in the Dutch Bible as well. We have the problem in the Dutch Bible. The verses are different in the Psalms. So it's either verse 6 or it's verse 8.
Ok, donc c'est le verset 8 en fait. C'est le verset 8. La loi de l'Éternel est parfaite, elle restaure l'âme. Le témoignage de l'Éternel est véritable. Il rend sage l'ignorant.
I heard veritable. That sounds like veritas, like reliable, true. Is that right? Okay, that sounds very. So that's something like the commands of God are reliable, are trustworthy. We trust God because we know his commands are trustworthy. If we pick up the Bible and we read it, we can trust what he says to us. Trust is very much built on words. When do we lose trust in each other sometimes? Or you lose trust in people in general? When? Anybody? When we feel hurt? But what do they do that hurt us? that break the trust.
Pas compris, on se sent pas compris. When we are not understood, when we feel betrayed.
When we're not understood. Yeah.
Quand on vérifie pas ce qu'ils veulent nous dire exactement. When we don't check exactly what they want, what they meant to.
You don't understand exactly what they said. Yeah. When they lie. Yeah, when they say something and they don't do it. Or they say something and they don't mean it. Or they just lie to us. Then we lose trust. But with God, He is trustworthy because we can always trust what He says. God does not lie to us. He does not make empty promises. He does not say things to hurt us. We can trust His commands and His words. In Psalm 33, and I guess this will be verse 5, in English it's, "For the word of the Lord is right and true, He is faithful in all He does."
Car la parole de l'Éternel est droite, et toutes ses œuvres s'accomplissent avec fidélité.
So God is trustworthy or faithful, not only in what He says, but also in what He does.
Dieu est fiable non seulement dans ce qu'il dit, mais aussi dans ce qu'il fait.
We lose trust in people when they do things that hurt us.
On perd la confiance dans les personnes quand elles font des choses qui nous plaisent.
When they let us down.
Quand ils nous laissent tomber.
God is not like that.
Dieu n'est pas comme ça.
We can trust in God because we can trust His promises.
Faire confiance en Dieu parce qu'on peut faire confiance.
In Joshua chapter 23,
En Josué, chapitre 23,
verse 14.
verset 14. Verset 14 dit, voici, je m'en vais maintenant par le chemin de toute la terre. Reconnaissez de tout votre cœur et de toute votre âme qu'aucune de toutes les bonnes paroles prononcées sur vous par l'Éternel votre Dieu n'est restée sans effet. Toutes se sont accomplies pour vous. Aucune n'est restée sans effet.
Okay, it should say something like, all the good promises the Lord your God gave you, not one of them has failed.
Une seule effet.
Not one of them. Every promise has been fulfilled.
Toutes promesses ont été réalisées.
How many of us can say this about
Toutes
ourselves? You know, every promise I ever made, I fulfilled.
les jamais faits ont été tenus.
Even the small ones, you know. I'll phone you. I will call you. I'll phone you. I will see you at 10 o'clock at church. We're not like God. But God has always kept every promise He made. And we read the Bible and we think, yeah, you know, that was nice for the Israelites. But you know, in your life, if you're a Christian, God has done the same for you. He has made many promises to us as disciples. He said, I will save you. I will forgive your sins. I will put you in a family with many brothers and sisters. I will give you my kingdom. And so you can go on and on and on. Even in our lives, God has fulfilled every promise He has made. And for us to grow in our trust of God, we need to trust His promises. In Romans chapter 4, from verse 18, it quotes the example of Abraham, It was an incredible example of someone who trusted God and trusted the promises of God in an amazing way.
Quelqu'un qui a fait confiance au point de Dieu.
We read from verse 18 to 25.
Du verset 18 au 25. Espérant contre toute espérance, il crut, et devint ainsi le père d'une grande nombre de nations, selon ce qu'il lui avait été dit. Telle sera ta postérité. Et sans faillir dans la foi, il ne considéra point que son corps était déjà usé, qu'il avait déjà près de 100 ans, que Sarah n'était plus en état d'avoir des enfants. Ne douta point par incrédulité au sujet de la promesse de Dieu, mais il fut fortifié par la foi, donnant gloire à Dieu, et ayant la pleine conviction que ce qu'il promet, il peut aussi l'accomplir. C'est pourquoi cela lui fut imputé à justice. Mais ce n'est pas à cause de lui seul qu'il est écrit cela, que cela lui fut imputé. C'est encore à cause de nous, à qui cela sera imputé. À nous qui croyons en celui qui a ressuscité des morts, Jésus notre Seigneur, qui a été livré pour nos offenses et a ressuscité pour notre justification.
In verse 22 it says, 23, it was not written for him alone.
Ce n'est pas à cause de lui seul,
And in verse 24, but also for us.
mais aussi, verset suivant, à cause de nous.
Now, how many of us believe that God raised Jesus from the dead? If you believe that,
Je crois que Dieu a relevé Jésus d'entre les morts.
okay, if you don't believe that, that's fine, you know.
Si vous ne croyez pas ça,
You can have your opinion, but I definitely encourage you to speak to someone here that does believe it,
je vous encourage à parler à quelqu'un.
so they can share their conviction with you, and you understand why you believe that.
Pour chacun soit sûr de pourquoi il croit.
Now, if God can raise someone from the dead,
Donc, Dieu peut relever quelqu'un d'entre les morts.
what other thing in your life can you think of that is bigger than that?
Quoi d'autre plus énorme que ça vous pouvez penser dans vos vies
That you find hard to trust God with?
et qui font que vous trouvez difficile de faire confiance à Dieu.
In verse 18 it says, against all hope, Abraham in hope believed.
Verset 18, il dit espérant contre toute espérance, il crut.
Trusting in God means going against all human hope.
Faire confiance en Dieu, ça veut dire aller à l'encontre des espoirs habituels humains.
My wife works for an organization in Amsterdam
Ma femme travaille pour l'organisation à Amsterdam.
that is a non-government organization, a charity organization.
C'est une organisation non gouvernementale, caritative.
So they receive 60% of their funding from the Dutch government.
Ils reçoivent 100% de leur financement par le gouvernement.
So last week they got notified that by the end of next year their funding will be reduced to zero.
Et la semaine dernière, j'ai reçu un courrier leur disant qu'à partir de la fin de l'année prochaine, leur financement diminuait jusqu'à zéro.
And on Thursday evening they had a big meeting with the whole company, 130 people.
Et jeudi soir, il y avait une réunion avec beaucoup de sociétés, à 30 personnes.
And of course you can think how people are. Angry,
On pouvait penser comme les
scared,
fâchés,
hopeless.
sans espoir.
Am I going to lose my job?
Ah, je vais à mon travail.
And my wife was there like in, oh, okay, this is interesting, you know, let's discuss it and see what's happening. And
Ma femme, quand était là, elle disait, oh, ok, c'est intéressant de voir ce qui se passe.
I'm very positive and hopeful.
Et plein d'espoir.
And some of the people ask her, how can you be like that?
Les autres ont dit, comment tu peux être comme ça?
Because when we hope in God, our hope goes against all hope that the world has.
Quand on fait confiance à Dieu, nos espoirs vont à l'encontre des espoirs courants.
When the world is hopeless, we have hope.
Quand le monde est sans espoir, nous avons de l'espoir.
And it's a long story how my wife got that job, but it was a miracle of God.
C'est une longue histoire d'expliquer comment ma femme a eu ce job-là, mais c'est un miracle de Dieu.
And we trust that God gave her that job, and if He wants her to keep it, He will let her keep it.
Et on fait confiance que Dieu lui a donné ce travail, et s'il veut qu'elle le garde, elle le gardera.
And if He wants something else for her, He will give her something else.
Et s'il veut quelque chose de différent pour elle, il donnera quelque chose de différent.
That is a trust in God where your hope goes against the hopelessness of the world.
Ça, c'est la confiance en Dieu qui vous donne des espoirs qui vont contre le désespoir. Un espoir qui va contre le désespoir habituel.
In verse 19 we read about Abraham.
Verset 19, on a lu au sujet d'Abraham.
Without weakening in his faith, he faced the fact that his body was as good as dead.
Et sans tenir dans la foi, il ne considéra point que son corps était déjà usé.
I can relate a bit to that. I'm not nearly as old as Abraham,
J'ai pas le même âge qu'Abraham,
but as you can see, I'm turning grey.
mais comme vous voyez, je deviens innocent.
I like to say I'm in my early 40s,
Dans mes début de la quarantaine,
but I do refereeing for my son's rugby team.
et je fais juste pour l'équipe de mon fils, je crois.
Rugby?
Rugby.
Rugby?
Rugby.
And if you run around with a bunch of 15-year-olds for an hour,
Et si vous agitez et courez sur un terrain pendant 1 heure avec une bande d'ados de 15 ans,
and they finish and they like in fresh and ready for another hour,
et quand ils ont fini, ils sont tout frais et dispo pour continuer une deuxième heure.
and I'm so happy I have the whistle and I can say, it's the
Et
end,
de pouvoir souffler dans et à la fin,
because I have to face the fact that my body is not 15 years old anymore.
je dois faire face à la réalité que mon corps n'a plus maintenant.
But Abraham faced the facts and he trusted that God can change the facts.
Mais Abraham faisait face aux faits, mais avait aussi la confiance que Dieu pouvait changer ça.
We can trust in God's promises because He can change things in the world that people look at and say, who can do anything about that? Nobody can change that.
On peut faire confiance à Dieu parce qu'il peut changer les choses dans le monde où nous autres, on va constater qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire, qu'est-ce qui pourrait changer.
So if we trust God, God also wants some things for us in trust. And God wants us to trust each other as disciples.
Dieu veut aussi qu'on se fasse confiance l'un à l'autre dans la mission.
So let's look at another video clip here, but I have a question for you first.
Et on va regarder un clip vidéo, mais j'ai d'abord une question pour vous.
Waiting for the technology. Oh, there's a nice countdown here. 17, 16, 15. The question is, we're going to see 2 photos here of 2 people. And the question is, which of them do you trust more?
Et ma question
And why?
À laquelle des deux faites-vous le plus confiance et pourquoi?
So here we see a very nice old lady and a young guy with stockings over his head.
Une vieille dame,
Like stockings.
une vieille dame, et un jeune homme avec un collant, un bas sur la tête.
Okay, we're going to have a vote. So you think quickly, which one would you trust more? Okay.
On va voter
So,
à qui faites-vous le plus confiance?
if you trust the old lady more, put up your hand.
Si vous faites...
Okay, that's like the majority. So the majority trusts her more than this
La
guy.
majorité a plus confiance à elle qu'à lui.
And it's amazing how we easily allow our prejudice
C'est marrant de voir comment on peut aussi facilement laisser nos préjugés
and looking at the outside as the basis for our trust.
et juste regarder l'apparence, l'extérieur des choses et prendre ça comme base de notre jugement.
Let's see who we can really trust of these two.
Regardez si on peut vraiment leur faire confiance.
It's for sale. The side of the car is for sale.
On va faire à vendre.
Not every old lady are equally trustworthy.
La vente dit toutes les vieilles femmes ne sont pas aussi mieux que les autres.
Now let's look at the guy with the sock over his cock, over his
Regardons
head.
le jeune homme avec le collant sur la tête.
What do you think when you see someone with a sock over his head like that?
Que vous pensez quand vous voyez un
Robber! Yeah, robber, burglar.
braqueur?
So, let's see, this guy actually tried to illustrate that point. He's not a robber at all.
Ce gars-là n'est pas un voleur fiscal, il essaie d'illustrer ce point justement.
Amanda, how are you doing? I just want to ask you a question, Amanda. When I put this over my head, what does that immediately remind you of?
Une deuxième question.
Everyone always says bank robber, and I reckon that's really discriminatory. Because I think wearing a stocking on your head like this is actually a really good look. And lately I'm wearing one, just as a bit of a fashion statement. And everywhere I go, I believe I get nothing but prejudice.
Oh no.
Ah oui.
So if I ask now again, who do you trust more?
On demande qui est le plus confiant.
Who trusts the old lady more?
Qui est plus confiant à la mesdames?
Nobody. Now I think it's so easily that the things we do and the things we say betray the trust. But God looks at the heart.
C'est facile de faire en sorte que les choses que l'on fasse, que l'on dise, trahissent la conscience. Mais Dieu regarde le cœur.
Because we are not like God,
Parce que nous ne sommes pas comme Dieu.
we sometimes sin.
On pêche parfois.
It means we sometimes sin against each other.
Et ça veut dire que nous péchons parfois les uns contre les autres.
And it means sometimes we say things,
Et parfois on dit des choses.
and sometimes we do things
Et parfois on fait des choses
that can hurt the trust between each other.
qui peuvent blesser la conscience les uns les uns sur les autres.
But our trust of each other as disciples
Notre confiance les uns dans les autres en tant que disciples,
should be built on the hearts and not on the outside.
il devrait être sur notre cœur, et pas juste basé sur les termes.
In John 13, verse 34 and 35,
Jean 13, c'est 14, 15, non. Je vous donne un commandement nouveau. Aimez-vous les uns les autres, comme je vous ai aimé vous aussi. Aimez-vous les uns les autres. À ceci, tous connaîtront que vous êtes mes disciples. Vous avez de l'amour les uns pour les autres.
Jesus said, this defines you as a disciple,
Et Jésus dit cela vous définit en tant que disciples.
that you love one another.
Que vous aimiez les uns les autres.
We need to love one another.
On a besoin de s'aimer les uns les autres.
Why do we need to be told to love?
Pourquoi on a besoin d'être enseigner.
Nobody needs to tell me to love my wife.
Personne n'a besoin de me dire d'aimer ma femme.
I just fell in love with her.
Je suis tombé amoureux d'elle.
But that's just one unique person in my life.
C'est juste une seule personne unique dans ma vie.
Everybody else takes a bit more effort to love.
Et pour tous les autres personnes, ça me demande plus d'efforts.
And sometimes we have to remind ourselves that, yeah, we have to love one another.
Et parfois, on doit se rappeler que, oui, on doit s'aimer les uns les autres.
In 1 Corinthians 13, from verse 4 to 8, it's a great definition of love. We're not going to read all of it, but in verse 4 it starts off, 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, it starts off by saying, love is. L'amour est. And then in verse 7, it says it always protects, it always trusts. Is it also verse 7? Always trust. So love always trusts. And if we have to love one another as disciples, we also have to trust one another. And if I have to put this in my own words, I haven't met Vincent only once at EBS. And I think we had one conversation over lunch or dinner. And the rest of you, I don't know. I met Jean-Philippe half an hour ago, maybe 45 minutes. But I trust Vincent. And I trust Jean-Philippe. And if I have to put these scriptures in my own words, it's I trust you because you're my brother, and because I trust God, and because I love you. I trust you because I trust your heart. And not because your deeds and your words are always perfect and trustworthy. You know, we need to learn to trust each other's hearts. It's sometimes so easy to forget that we love and we serve the same God. We all share the same purpose. We all want to go to heaven and be with God. We love people and we want to help them. But to learn to love like disciples and trust like disciples, we need to learn to separate behavior and situations from the heart of the person. I was on holiday with my family in South Africa in the summer. And we stayed at a really nice holiday resort. And there was this jacuzzi, big family jacuzzi. But there was something wrong with the electricity of the jacuzzi. So if you step into the jacuzzi, if you have 1 foot outside, the moment you touch the water, you'll get an electric shock. So the only way to get into the jacuzzi is to actually jump over. So you don't touch the water and the ground outside at the same time. There was a little leakage, earth leakage there. And once you're in the water, you're safe. But then you can't get out again. And my mum was saying, I don't trust that jacuzzi. It's an evil jacuzzi. You know, sometimes we like that with each other, you know. Sometimes we have some flaws in our character.
Parfois, on a des moments comme ça, le caractère de certains interlocuteurs.
And we say, I don't trust the person.
C'est pas confiance à cette personne.
We say we think the person is evil.
Vous pensez que la personne est mauvaise.
Or the person has evil intent.
Ou qu'elle a des mauvaises intentions.
Just because there's some sin in between.
Tout parce qu'il y a du péché entre nous.
That jacuzzi is not evil.
Le jacuzzi n'est pas contraint du mal.
There was just a fault that had to be corrected.
C'est juste une erreur que nous corriger.
And once the electricians came and they fixed it,
Une fois que l'électricien est venu, il a réparé.
the jacuzzi was only half as much fun.
Le jacuzzi était beaucoup moins marrant.
But it's the same with our hearts.
C'est la même chose avec nos cœurs.
We need to trust each other's hearts.
On doit faire confiance en nos cœurs et en nous.
The last point about trust is that God trusts us to respond to His trust.
Et l'un des points sur la confiance, c'est que Dieu nous enseigne à répondre à la confiance.
Let's go to Matthew 24, verse 44 to 46.
En Matthieu 24, Matthieu 24, verset.
Matthew 24, verse 44 to 46.
Ok, Matthieu 24, verset 44 au verset 46. Verset 44. C'est pourquoi, vous aussi, tenez-vous prêts, car le Fils de l'homme viendra à l'heure où vous n'y penserez pas. Quel exemple de serviteur fidèle et prudent que son maître a établi sur ses gens pour leur donner la nourriture au temps convenable? Heureux ce serviteur, que son maître à son arrivée trouvera ses gens ainsi.
It talks about we must be ready, and in verse 45 it says, you know, we are the servants of God. It's a parable.
C'est une parabole qui nous demande d'être prêts, le verset 45, qui nous compare aux serviteurs.
And it says the master has put us in charge.
Et il dit que le maître nous a donné des responsabilités.
God has entrusted much to us as disciples.
Et Dieu nous a confié beaucoup à nous en tant que disciples.
Jesus was only 33 approximately when he died.
Jésus avait seulement 33 ans à peu près quand il est mort.
Most of us expect to live to, if all is well and God blesses us, expect to live to maybe 65, 70, 75 in Europe, maybe 80 even.
La plupart d'entre nous, si tout se passe bien, et Dieu nous protège, on s'attend à vivre 65, 70, 75 ans, et même plus en Europe.
And we can always think that why didn't God leave Jesus just until he was, you know, going into retirement?
On peut se poser la question de pourquoi Dieu n'a pas laissé là Jésus longtemps jusqu'à ce qu'il puisse prendre la retraite.
He could have done so much more.
Il peut faire tellement plus.
But God wanted to entrust us and put us in charge of much.
Et Dieu voulait nous faire confiance, transmettre cette confiance après à nous et nous rendre responsables.
In Matthew 25, verse 14 and 15,
Matthieu 25,
we're not going to read the whole parable. It's the parable of the talents.
la parabole du talent, verset 14.
We just read verse 14 and 15.
Jusqu'au verset 14 et 15. Mais on sera comme d'un homme qui, partant pour un voyage, appela ses serviteurs et leur remit ses biens. Il donna 5 talents à l'un, 2 à l'autre, et 1 au troisième, à chacun selon sa capacité. Et il partit.
Verse 14 it says, he entrusted his property to them. Say that, verse 14? He entrusted his property to them.
Au verset 14, en fait, il a remis ses biens, donc il leur a donné la charge de gérer ses biens.
And in verse 15, each according to his ability.
Et au verset 15, chacun selon sa capacité.
It is God's property.
C'est la propriété de Dieu.
I'm thinking, what property of God has he entrusted to us?
De quelle propriété de Dieu il nous a donné la charge?
What belongs to God that is given to us and say, you are responsible for this.
Qu'est-ce qui appartient à Dieu, il nous a donné, et maintenant il nous dit, vous êtes responsable.
Do something with it.
Faites-en quelque chose.
What do you think?
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez? Notre vie, il nous a donné la vie en life. He gave us our life.
He gave us our life,
Your skill.
our own life. our skills. Yeah, our skills.
talents,
It could be mental skills, hand skills,
talents
personality
intellectuels,
skills,
personnalité,
knowledge,
la connaissance,
our families. You mean like blood family, wives, children? Yeah, our families, friendships, the gospel.
la bonne nouvelle.
It's God's property and He's given it to us. It's the gospel.
Compris que Dieu est une raison.
Yeah, He's entrusted the gospel to us. He entrusted the poor and the needy of the world to us.
Il nous a donné la charge de l'évangile, mais la charge des pauvres et des nécessiteux aussi.
He's entrusted even this planet to us
Même cette planète.
and the care of this planet to us. To take care of the planet.
Ah, de prendre soin de cette planète.
And like he said, friendships, relationships.
Comme il a dit,
All people on this world are God's property.
toutes les personnes sur cette terre sont la propriété de Dieu.
God entrusted the souls of our fellow human beings to us.
Il nous a donné la charge des âmes de tous nos frères humains.
And He has equipped us. He's given us talents
Il nous a équipés, il nous a donné des talents
to actually respond to that trust that He's put in us.
d'être, pour pouvoir répondre à cette confiance qui nous porte.
What are we like? Are we like the man who hid his talent under the ground? Who buried his talent?
Comment est-ce qu'on est? Comme celui qui a caché les talents de métaux précieux dans la terre?
Or actually doing something, responding to the trust that God put in us?
Ou on fait quelque chose avec, on répond à la confiance que Dieu nous porte.
Yeah, I know sometimes it feels like, I feel like this sometimes.
Parfois, je me sens comme cela.
I know God said, I won't give you more than I can handle.
Et je sais que Dieu a dit, je ne vous donnerai pas plus que ce que tu peux supporter.
And sometimes I feel like, oh God, why do you trust me so much? But God expects us to respond to His trust. In Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6,
Proverbe 3. Il dit, confie-toi en l'Éternel de tout ton cœur, ne t'appuie pas sur ta sagesse, reconnais-le dans toutes tes voies, et ne t'amènera que sans pied.
says, trust in the Lord with what?
Fais confiance en l'Éternel avec quoi?
With your heart.
Avec ton cœur.
So trust is emotional. It's from the heart.
Confiance, c'est une émotion dans le cœur.
And it says, lean not on your own understanding.
Et il dit, ne t'appuie pas sur ta sagesse.
Where does understanding come from? With our minds.
La compréhension, c'est dans
So trust is emotional, but it's also rational, with our minds.
la confiance est émotionnelle, mais c'est aussi rationnel dans notre esprit.
And in verse 6 he says, in all your ways acknowledge Him.
Le verset 6, il dit, dans toutes tes voies, reconnais-le.
Trusting God is emotional, it is with our mind, but it's also with what we do.
La confiance en Dieu, c'est dans nos émotions, dans notre raisonnement, mais aussi dans la façon dont nous faisons les choses.
We're not going to read all of it now, but the whole of chapter Hebrews chapter 11
Et tout le chapitre de Hébreux, on va le lire.
is examples of people in the Old Testament who trusted God.
Ce sont des exemples de personnes dans l'Ancien Testament qui avaient confiance en Dieu.
And every one of them, their trust did not stop just with an emotion or a thought.
Et la confiance de chacun d'entre eux ne s'arrêtait pas juste aux émotions ou à la compréhension.
Every one of them acted on their trust in God.
Et chacun a agi sur
Abel.
la confiance qu'il avait.
Abel trusted God and he offered a sacrifice.
Et il a fait confiance en Dieu et a offert un sacrifice.
Noah trusted God and he built an ark.
Noé a fait confiance à Dieu et a construit l'arche.
Abraham trusted God and he moved countries to a place that he did not know.
Abraham a fait confiance à Dieu et a déplacé son peuple dans un pays qu'il ne connaissait pas.
He trusted God and prepared to sacrifice his son.
Et il a fait confiance à Dieu et était prêt à sacrifier son propre fils.
And so we can go on with the parents of Moses,
Il faut continuer avec les parents de Moïse.
and Joshua and Rahab. And it carries on. Samuel, David, more and more examples. Every one of them acted on their trust in God.
Chacun d'entre eux agit selon la confiance qu'il a.
Yeah, and I think many of our churches in Europe
Je pense que beaucoup de nos églises en Europe
went through some difficult times,
sont passées par des moments difficiles.
and we had to go through some purification and some learning.
On a dû passer par des moments de purification et on apprend.
And the church in Amsterdam also had a very difficult time.
Et il y a un aussi avec des moments très difficiles.
But there comes a time to stop looking backwards
Et il y a un moment où on doit arrêter de regarder derrière.
and start looking forwards.
Et commencer à regarder devant.
And the only way we can look forward
La seule façon qu'on a de regarder plus loin devant,
is if we trust.
c'est si on a confiance.
Because many of the things that we look back at
Parce que beaucoup des choses, entre les choses qu'on regarde en arrière,
don't build trust.
ne construisent pas la confiance.
But we look forward by trusting God
Et si on regarde devant, en confiance à Dieu,
and trusting each other's hearts.
on se met en confiance dans le cœur des autres.
And if we start taking steps based on that trust,
Et si on commence à franchir des étapes
then God,
de confiance,
starts moving.
alors Dieu commence à agir.
In Amsterdam, there was nobody baptized for 8 years.
À Amsterdam, il y a personne qui a été baptisé ces 8 dernières années.
The church just went smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller for 8 years.
Et l'église a passé de devenir de plus en plus petite.
2 years ago, I moved there from Africa,
Il y a 2 ans, j'ai déménagé là-bas depuis l'Afrique.
and we said we need to start looking forward.
Et on s'est dit, on a beaucoup besoin de commencer à regarder vers l'avant.
In the last 2 years, nobody left the church.
L'année dernière, 2 dernières années, personne ne quittait.
Last year, 3 people came back to the church.
L'an dernier, 3 personnes sont revenues à l'église.
This year, more came back.
Et cette année, beaucoup plus sont revenus.
And then we started praying, God, please send us people.
Et on a prié, Dieu, s'il te plaît, envoie-nous des personnes.
And it's amazing how God responded.
Et par la façon de Dieu.
In June, we had our first baptism in 8 years.
En juin, on a prié la terre en 8 ans.
And I'm not lying to you, I can prove it. Because he's sitting right here. But God responded when we started trusting Him.
Dieu a répondu quand on a commencé à lui faire confiance.
We didn't go out for hours and hours walking the streets and talking to people,
Des heures, marchant dans les rues à parler aux gens.
thinking we have to do everything.
Pensant qu'on doit faire tout et n'importe quoi.
He said, no, God will do it if we trust Him.
Dieu le fera si on lui fait confiance.
Many of us as disciples started off as campus students, single, with a lot of time and a lot of zeal and only focus on one thing.
Beaucoup d'entre nous ont commencé sur des disciples comme des étudiants sur les campus universitaires, des célibataires avec plein de temps et
And then we got-
faire une seule chose.
And then we got professional jobs with very demanding hours.
Après, on a des jobs, des professions qui sont assez exigeantes en temps et qui demandent notre temps.
And we got wives and husbands that we just love to spend time with.
Et on a une femme avec qui on adore passer du temps.
And we got children with school and activities, and we have to teach them and raise them.
L'école, les activités.
And I thought, we don't have so much time anymore.
Et on pense, mais on n'a plus tellement de temps maintenant.
And we got back into survival mode.
Et on passe en mode survie.
I just want to survive in my faith.
Juste la fin survie.
And we think, I have to do things the same way I did it before.
Et je dois penser, mais je dois faire les choses de la même façon que je faisais avant.
But I can't see it happening because I just don't have the time.
Mais je peux croire que ça peut se réaliser parce que simplement, j'ai pas le temps.
Instead of changing our thinking, we just stopped doing.
Et au lieu de changer notre façon de penser, on arrête juste de faire les choses.
And as our life changes and our life phases changes,
Alors que notre vie change, et les phases de notre vie changent,
I think we learn more and more to trust God.
je pense qu'on apprend de plus en plus à faire confiance à Dieu.
Now we ask God to send us people, and it's amazing the miracles He's done.
Et on demande à Dieu de nous envoyer des personnes, et c'est fantastique